August 24th. We're gonna continue reading this bullshit here. Also, just for the record, Platform Decay, the price has been announced, and my twin said to get System Collapse out for a demonstration of, like, that's barely, System Collapse, Book 7 is barely bigger than Book 1, and Platform Decay is supposed to be around the same number of pages as this bullshit right here. This is 241. I'm not scrolling through that right now to see how much they're lying about that. But they're planning to charge $25 fucking dollars for Platform Decay. Hold on, let me turn the fan on. They're planning to charge $25 for Platform Decay. And also, for anybody who doesn't know, Platform Decay, Martha Wells picked that because she's a corporate sellout. Platform Decay is an alternative term for end-shitification. If you don't know what end-shitification is, look it up. You probably know what it means. You just didn't know there was a word for it. So Martha Wells is naming her book that. So if you are going to talk about Platform Decay when it comes out, do everybody who actually cares about the death of the internet due to corporate greed a favor and spell the book title as one fucking word. Platform Decay. One word instead of two. Because any social media thing that's talking about Platform Decay is talking about the fucking encroaching death of the internet via corporate greed, also known as Platform Decay, also known as end-shitification. And now Martha Wells, who is literally shilling for fucking Apple right now and has sold out to Apple, named her fucking book that, which means it's now going to be that much more difficult for people in the future to talk about Platform Decay, the fucking concept, because their tags will get flooded with whatever bullshit happens in the 12th? 13th? I think it's the 12th Murderbot book. Maybe it's the 13th. I just need to write the list down. My laptop's asleep. Anyways, we're gonna fucking do this. Also, I can't tell if my face is red. I might have gotten sunburn. Probably got sunburn because I have yet to find a single thing of sunscreen lotion that I can put on my face without it making my eyes boil. Not literally, but that's what it fucking feels like. Anyways, we were on page 62. Like, do I have only one side of my face is sunburned? The other's not. Poke. Doesn't hurt. Just looks really red. Yeah, we had just read the sentence. I really, really wished I could pinpoint the location of those 3 sec units, but I wasn't getting anything from them because I had to stop because it's just like there's no part of this book and this whole series at this point that's not just doing slavery apologism. Any other book where we have the kind of tingling. I don't know what's going on with my face. Any other book series where we got the sentence from the basic concept of a slave says, I really wish I knew where the other slaves were. This wouldn't be what's going on in here. Okay, I'm back. Washed my face. It's still red. I don't know what's going on, but it's not like I'm overheating or anything. Anyways, we had read the sentence on the page before where Murderbot's like, I really, really wished I could pinpoint the location of those other slaves, but I wasn't getting anything from them. And pointing out, any book that's not written by a racist who's literally just doing slavery apologism. I shouldn't even have to explain this, but Martha Wells forces me to, because that's it's just so fucking ridiculous. Any story about a slave where the slave thinks, I really wish I knew where the other slaves were, when they are going to an area that has faced a natural disaster, any book not written by a fucking racist is going to have the slave thinking that, because, you know, basic solidarity, basic morality, basic caring about other fucking slaves. But Martha Wells doesn't want us to be concerned about the other slaves here. She doesn't want us to worry about where they are or what's going on with them. Hold on so I can get a drink. We're not supposed to be concerned about them because we want them to be okay, because we want them to be safe, or anything like that. No, we're supposed to be worried about where they are because they're dangerous, rabid animal, mindless killing machines who need to be fucking put down so that they don't hurt the precious, pure cinnamon roll slave owners. Because that's what this book is doing. We're not concerned about the safety of the slaves because they're slaves who deserve better than this shit, and this could be an opportunity to help them escape. Murderbot's not looking for them, doesn't want to know where they are so it can find them before anybody else notices, so it can tell them very quickly, keep quiet, don't say anything. It could even be hacking their governor modules, but no, we're not doing that because this is a racist book written by a racist white woman from Texas who has actively, maliciously refused to unlearn any of the fucking slavery apologism she has been getting shoved down her throat her entire life, and now she's shoving it down our throats. Despite having literal decades at this point in her writing career of people explaining to her that slavery apologism is bad, and does she actually take any of this constructive criticism? No. She literally will just make a caricature of the people criticizing the slavery apologism and then put that in the story where she's doing slavery apologism to make fun of them like a fucking 12-year-old. So we got that sentence. I really wished I could, what was it exactly? Skip back a page. Can we turn page? Just wash my hands so they're not... Yeah, I really, really wished I could pinpoint the location of those 3 sec units, but I wasn't getting anything from them. And then the next paragraph is, sec units aren't sentimental about each other, period. We aren't friends, the way the characters on the serials are, or the way my humans are. We can't trust each other, even if we work together. Even if you don't have clients who decide to entertain themselves by ordering their sec units to fight each other. And Murderbot doesn't think this. It's all just slavery apologism. It's literally slavery apologism. All of it. All of it. Nobody who's not fucking racist and doing slavery apologism is going to write a book where the fucking slave protagonist tells you, the fucking reader, you can't trust other slaves. They're untrustworthy, even when they haven't been ordered to fucking, and you haven't both been ordered to fight each other. And also, I do want to state again, this sentence here, even if you don't have clients who decide to entertain themselves by ordering their sec units to fight each other. This is just more of Murderbot's imaginary, fake fucking backstory that never appears on screen in any way, shape, or form. And I will tell you why. It's because, A, as long as Martha Wells just keeps telling us that Murderbot has a tragic backstory, it means people are more likely to like Murderbot and make excuses for it, even when what they're excusing is it being a fucking serial murderer of other slaves out of literal, pure malicious spite, which we'll see pretty fucking soon. And as long as she just keeps telling us, Murderbot has a tragic backstory, it's the underdog, trust me. But then we never actually see it being the underdog, at least in regards to other slaves, because all of this shit that we just keep getting told totally happened to it is all off screen. It never appears on screen. We never have any proof that any of this happened. And it's like, it's fine to have a backstory, but when the backstory completely goes against everything else that's happening in the story, it's just kind of ridiculous, especially because then Martha Wells wants to get snippy and be annoyed by people in the audience who are confused, reasonably fucking confused about why Murderbot in book 3, where randomly told Murderbot seemed scared of a human by another fucking character. And people are reasonably baffled by that fucking statement from the book, because as far as these fucking books have shown us, as far as Martha Wells wants us to believe, not if we are actually doing active reading like I am. If you just go along with what the vibes of these books are telling you, humans are always nice to Murderbot. Ignore the part where they fucking made it clean up its own fucking blood after it almost died, saving 2 of their fucking lives, and then none of them said thank you, including either of the people whose lives were saved. I do have to remind everyone, we're still treating... They are... Not me. We're not doing anything. These motherfuckers are. They are still treating Murderbot like a slave. We're on chapter 4, I think. Yeah, we're on chapter 4, and they're still treating Murderbot like a slave. But as far as the story is concerned, as far as Martha Wells is concerned, they're being awesome. And the fandom will try to convince you that they're treating Murderbot like a person. Because they just didn't realize it wasn't a person before. Because that's the lie the characters literally tell you. And that Martha Wells tells you in this book and then literally spends the entire rest of the series disproving. But then doesn't actually want us to treat it like a lie. Because she's a shit racist writer. Anyways. Yeah, this is all slavery apologism. Nobody who's actually not racist and anti-racist and thinks slavery is actually bad and actually grasps what slavery is. Nobody like that would ever write a story where we have a fucking slave that we are told is a good person, that we should look up to and trust their opinions on shit. Nobody would ever do this and then have that slave be the biggest advocate for demonizing other slaves in the whole series. It's just racism. None of the in-universe justifications actually justifies this. It's fucking nonsensical because Martha Wells is fucking racist and classist and ableist and hates trans people, and at this point just also hates Arrow Ace people because she seemed like she was trying to represent us. As anybody who's read up to the end of the series now will be able to tell you, yeah, even her most staunch defenders are just they're side-eyeing her because it's like, okay, why does she keep insisting upon framing this relationship between Murderbot and Art as romantic when she's supposed to be expecting us to trust her that Murderbot is Arrow and not interested in that? Why is literally every single fucking character and the narrative itself framing this as a romantic relationship when Murderbot is supposed to be Arrow Ace and Murderbot itself doesn't want to be in a romantic relationship? It seems like we are literally just queer baiting Arrow Ace people because we were promised, and as far as fucking Murderbot is concerned, it does not want anything to do with romance. So why is the entire narrative and every single other fucking character in this goddamn story going behind Murderbot's back to insist that the relationship is romantic anyways? She's very clearly just pandering to the aloe shippers who have made being in this fandom a fucking living hell for Arrow Ace people. Non-partnering Arrow Ace people like Murderbot is supposed to be. And it's not even in a character development way. It's not even Murderbot's working through literally anything and coming to the realization that, oh, maybe I do kind of experience some kind of attraction. I don't know. Like, you could do that. But we're not doing that. Martha Wells doesn't believe in character development. And the lack of character development in her stories, literally her own words, that's a feature, not a bug. Despite her not telling people this from the fucking start and promising us twice in this fucking series, 3 times now, that she's broken that promise, that the characters will actually develop and actually do something. That hasn't happened yet. Anyways, the scans read the perimeter sensors as dead and the drones weren't picking up any warning indicators. The Deltfall hub system was down, and without it, no one inside could access our feed or comms, theoretically. We crossed over... Alright, hold on. Let me start this paragraph again, because this is a bad paragraph. This should be multiple paragraphs. Alright. The scans read the perimeter sensors as dead, and the drones weren't picking up any warning indicators. The Deltfall hub system was down, and without it, no one inside could access our feed or comms, theoretically. That should all be its own sentence, because that's talking about, like, the security measures and shit and stuff like that. That's its own little itty-bitty little mini subject within this book, within this page. And now what comes after should be a separate fucking paragraph, but it's not, for some reason. So this is me between my fingers there. This paragraph, it needs to be broken up, because you should have a paragraph break there. Look! That would even give you another fucking line with which to fill out this scam of a fucking book. But it would be for a good, actual fucking basic editing, writing reason instead of bullshit. We're literally gonna insert 10 blank fucking pages. Anyways, the rest of this shitty paragraph that should be its own paragraph reads, "We crossed over and into the landing area for their hoppers." And then that's a sentence. But then the next sentence is, "They were between us and the first habitat, the vehicle storage to one side." That period between the landing area for their hoppers, period. They were between us and the first habitat. That should just be a comma. What's going on with this paragraph? This is on page 62. 62. This doesn't seem like it was edited at all. Like, that should be a fucking... That should just be a comma there. What happened to the editing for this paragraph? There should be a paragraph break, and then those shouldn't be two separate sentences. That should be separated by a comma. Anyways, I was leading us in at an angle, trying to get a visual on the main habitat door, but I was also checking the ground. It was mostly bare of grass from all the foot traffic and hopper landings. From the weather report we'd gotten before the satellite quit, it had rained here last night, and the mud had hardened. No activity since then. I passed that info to Mensa through the feed, and she told the others. Keeping her voice low, Pin Lee said, "So whatever happened, it wasn't long after we spoke to them on the comm." "They couldn't have been attacked by someone," O'Verse whispered. There was no reason to whisper, but I understood the impulse. "There's no one else on this planet." "There's not supposed to be anyone else on this planet," Rathy said, darkly, over the comm from our hopper. Getting a drink, and then I'll read this next bullshit. I just have to keep saying this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's physically fucking impossible for someone who actually thinks that slavery is horrific to write a book like this. It's not possible. You ready for the next fucking paragraph? Let me read the one above it again. There's not supposed to be anyone else on this planet," Rathy said, darkly, over the comm from our hopper. "Now prepare yourself. There were 3 sec units who were not me on this planet, and that was dangerous enough." Because Martha Wells is demonizing slaves. She is literally treating slaves like the mindless killing machines that as a trope that she fucking claims to hate. She literally claims to hate the trope where robots just gain sentience and start killing people for no reason. But then that's how she's portraying every slave in this fucking series who's not the fucking protagonist. That's literally what's going on here. There were 3 sec units, aka slaves. There were 3 slaves who were not me on this planet, and that was dangerous enough. Because this whole fucking thing is literally just slavery apologism. And then when you point out the basic fact that this is literally just slavery apologism, the rabid stands the claim that you clearly haven't read the book, that you're criticizing in a way that you would literally need to have read the book in order to do. They will literally pretend that you have not fucking read the book. And then when enough people point out, or just they get embarrassed by stating a very obvious thing that's not true, they'll say, oh, you just have no reading comprehension. And it's like, insult of your choice. If you read this story and go off of only the vibes that the author wants you to pick up, without actually reading the fucking text and grasping what the fucking text is telling you, which is that you're supposed to think other slaves are all rabid fucking mindless killing machines, I'm not the one who lacks reading comprehension, and also, guess what? I'm aware that I do struggle with reading comprehension. I'm fucking autistic. I was held back. I was in special ed until like the 4th/5th grade, and the only reason we stopped being in it then is because the new school didn't have it. I'm aware that I have to read a book at least 3 fucking times in order to actually understand what the fuck is going on. That's why the first few times I read these, and like, honestly, even the first time I read it, I was like, I don't like that, but, you know, I was giving it the benefit of the doubt. I was assuming that it was in there on purpose because we would be dealing with it in the next book. And then I just kept waiting, and it just, until it just became blatantly fucking clear that, no, we're never, this shit isn't in here to criticize it. It's in here because this is what Martha Wells genuinely fucking believes and wants us to believe, and is literally training the goddamn fandom to believe, and it's literally fucking working. That's why I'm making these fucking videos. That's why we are fucking I'm doing active reading, and you, person in the future, maybe, I mean, you're definitely in the future from me right now, even if it's just like several hours. It could be 2035, I don't know. Hi from 2025. Hope you got any basic shit going on in the future. This is why I'm doing these fucking videos, so that you can all also see the basic shit that's in here when you actually genuinely fucking read what it is telling you, what the actual words say, instead of just going off the vibes. Because as far as the fucking vibes are concerned, Mensa is a pure cinnamon roll who's never done anything wrong. Now, don't even notice the fact that she literally left Murderbot's room covered in its own blood and forced it to have to clean that up after it fucking fell unconscious. Let me point the fan this way. As far as the vibes of this story go, these are all awesome people who are so good and so nice and totally treat Murderbot like a person as soon as they realize it's a person, as though they didn't know that the whole time, for everybody rereading this after reading the rest of the series, because that's how storytelling works. But, like, literally, they are still treating it like a fucking slave 63 pages in as far as this fucking scam is concerned. And let me flip to the last actual page of the story, because if I didn't mention it, they're counting this shit at the end as being numbered. The book claims there's 149 pages. We're at 63 pages in right now, and they are still treating it like a slave, but we're not supposed to see it as them treating it like a slave. We're supposed to think that these slave owners are doing everything right and are so nice and are so compassionate and are treating Murderbot so well because they're not actively, like, torturing it with a fucking weapon or something, even though they're enslaving it. They're enslaving it. They went solar systems out of their way to enslave it. Anyways. There were 3 sec units who were not me on this planet, and that was dangerous enough. I got my visual on the main habitat hatch and saw it was shut. No sign of anything forcing its way inside. The drones had circled the whole structure by now, and showed me the other entrances were the same. That was that. Hostile fauna don't come to the door and ask to be let inside. I sent the images to Mensa's feed and said aloud, Dr. Mensa, it would be better if I went ahead. Also, there's many problems with this basic... Hold on. The only reason that these characters are assuming that, oh, there's actually somebody else on the planet is because there is somebody else on the planet. Not because that's the most reasonable fucking conclusion for them to come to. This couldn't possibly be alien wildlife or just any indigenous life forms that did something at all, because the doors aren't broken in, and it's like, there's so many problems with that fucking concept. And the only reason we're acting like that's a given is, again, because that's what's going on. There's a name for this. It's kind of like how the more stormtroopers you have, the less accurate their shooting becomes. Or like when there's when there's time travel involved in the story, all of the characters will magically suddenly become incompetent in ways they normally aren't. And the only reason they're acting incompetent now is because time travel will fix it. It's kind of like, that's kind of what's going on here. It's as though the characters, they know what the plot is ahead of time. So that's the only reason they're coming to these conclusions. So they've come to the conclusion, they're not saying it out loud yet explicitly, but they've all come to the conclusion, especially Murderbot here, that, oh, there's somebody else on this planet who's killing people. And it's like, the only reason you think that is because that's what's actually happening, not because there's any actual evidence to prove that. The reasoning here is, that the doors show no sign of being forced open, so the reasoning is that it must be some other people or something, because hostile fauna don't come to the door and ask to be let inside, because the doors don't have giant scratch marks or dent marks in it, or anything like that. And it's like, okay, you're on an alien planet. You have no fucking clue what any of the wildlife looks like or is capable of. Why are you, like, they even just fucking said it just rained. What if there's a fucking thing that got stuck on the bottom of somebody's shoe and they tracked that inside? Because every time they've gone in and out of their habitat, we don't talk about, like, any, like an airlock or anything for just basic quarantine of anything you wore outside, you need to take off in here and then get a steam bath or something to kill anything like that. Just basic shit that we do here on Earth, just in, like, meat packing things to keep out germs and shit. They're not even doing that kind of shit on a completely alien planet that's pretty much unexplored. So why are we assuming that it couldn't possibly have been wildlife? Somebody could have stepped on some weird alien tadpole thing, and then that got stuck to the bottom of their chute, and then they tracked it inside because they have no quarantine procedures, or even just basic airlock at the front. And then that could have just, like, spread some fucking, I don't know, sleep spores. If we want to go with the best case scenario, if they're just asleep, it just could have just turned into a fucking giant frog and eaten everybody. Just because the door isn't busted in doesn't rule out alien wildlife just doing its thing. Like, that's ridiculous. You could look at a fucking ship with a xenomorph in it, and the outer doors aren't gonna be fucked up because, like, just, especially because Martha Wells has watched Alien and shit. She said specifically that book fucking 2, book 3, is inspired by Alien Isolation, and it's like, oh, so that's why you fucking cheated me and kept teasing about there being cool, actual sci-fi alien monster things running around, only to not write that fucking story? Pro tip, don't tease your audience with a cooler version of the story that you have no fucking intention of writing. Don't keep bringing up the concept of, what if they're scary, what if they're scary, cool, genetically modified aliens running around on the space station. Don't keep fucking bringing that up if you're not actually going to fucking do that. Just shut the fuck up. Don't tease your audience about a cooler story. Not even so you can badly reference alien isolation. But yeah, this is just very bad fucking logic. Hostile fauna don't come to the door and ask to be let inside, so therefore it could not possibly have been wildlife that caused this problem. It must be somebody else on the planet killing everybody, or the slaves magically freed themselves by magic and decided to kill everybody. A thing we're framing as a bad thing is though slaves, especially slaves who are regularly tortured, don't have that fucking right inherent. Like, I'm just not gonna get over that, because, like, you people you're not even wearing special suits outside that we make sure get cleaned off before you come inside. You could get bitten by a fucking mosquito, on an alien mosquito, a mosquitoid, and turn into a fucking alien werewolf thing and maul everybody. That also would not involve the outer doors having dents in them from, I don't know, alien triceratopses ramming them. Like, again, you'll notice that a lot as we get through these books. The characters come to very specific conclusions based on literally nothing, and they're always right, because the only reason they came to that conclusion in the first place is because that's what the plot is doing. It's not because the characters are actually figuring anything else out. They just know what the fucking plot is, because it's badly fucking written. I said, blah blah blah. Dr. Mensa, it would be better if I went ahead, because Murderbot... Nah, well, you'll fucking see. She hesitated, reviewing what I'd just sent her. I saw her shoulders tense. I think she had just come to the same... Okay. Alright, well, fuck Mensa even more now. I think she had just come to the same conclusion I had, and Murderbot's conclusion is that the other slaves have managed to somehow free themselves and murdered everybody, a thing we're presenting as a bad thing because we hate slaves. Well, no, we don't. Martha Wells does, though. She fucking hates slaves and hates the concept of slave rebellions. Because what about the poor, poor slave owners? They've never done anything wrong in their lives. Or no, it gets worse than my satire there. It gets worse. What do you mean it gets worse, you're asking? It gets worse. You'll see. I think she had just come to the same conclusion I had, or at least admitted to herself that it was the strongest possibility. And again, we're not saying it explicitly yet, but the conclusion they've both come to is the slaves somehow managed to get free and killed everybody. She said, "All right, we'll wait here. Make sure we can monitor." She said we, and she wouldn't have said that if she didn't mean it, unlike some clients I'd had. I'd sent my field camera's feed to all 4 of them and started forward. Again, more slavery apologism. Also, just, again, saying, oh, these pure, precious slave owners, they're the best slave owners ever. And again, every time I read out the word clients, you need to mentally replace that with slave owners. I would say I would just do that from now on, but that would be misrepresenting what the book is actually doing in regards to slavery apologism. So every single time I say client, mentally replace that with slave owner. Clients, slave owners, plural. Because that's what it means. A client is a slave owner. That's just the corporate speak for slave owner. She said we, and she wouldn't have said that if she didn't mean it. Unlike some clients I'd had, because my slave owners are the best slave owners. This is... yeah. Apparently people are watching the show where the fucking shitty-ass slave owners actually do the bare minimum to treat their slave like a person and literally give it free rein. The thing they're objectively not doing in this book that they had to put in the TV show because Apparently, even the rich people at Apple understand how bad slavery apologism looks. More than Martha Wells does. And that's fucking saying something, considering they're the people whitewashing Murderbot. Let me pause quick. Look, I genuinely don't know what's going on with my face. Let me take some allergy medicine. Alright, maybe it's just my camera making my face look extra red from this angle. It doesn't actually look this red in the actual mirror. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't itch or anything, it's just red. I mean, it could literally just be sunburn, but it's like, it's not hot to the touch. I don't know. Mystery. Anyways, yeah. Mensa has apparently also come to the conclusion that, the slaves must have gone rogue. Yeah. Client equals slave owner. Mentally replace the word client with slave owner. Now every time we say a rogue sec unit, mentally replace that with an escaping slave, because that's what it means. They call it going rogue to make it sound scary. What it literally is a slave who is attempting to fucking escape. But Martha Wells wants you to equate it to a mindless killing machine because she's fucking racist and is doing slavery apologism. That's what this whole fucking book is doing. I called 4 of the drones back, leaving 2 to keep circling the perimeter. I checked the vehicle shed as I moved past it. It was open on one side with some sealed lockers in the back for storage. All 4 of their surface vehicles were there, powered down, no sign of recent tracks, so I didn't go in. I wouldn't bother searching the small storage spaces until we got down to the looking for all the body parts phase. Also, I just want to note, you'll notice these descriptions aren't really describing anything, so let me just read that again. I checked the vehicle shed as I moved past it. It was open on one side, with some sealed lockers in the back for storage. All 4 of their surface vehicles were there, blah blah blah, powered down, no sign of recent tracks, so I didn't go in. You may notice that description is the vaguest fucking thing in the world and doesn't actually describe a single thing. We don't know what kind of material this fucking vehicle shed is. We just know that it's open on one side with some sealed lockers in the back for storage. We don't know how big it is. Is this the size of, say, a parking garage? We don't get a single description of these surface vehicles. Probably meaning cars, but we're calling them surface vehicles. We don't get a single description of them, not like what materials they're made out of, how big they are, nothing. No description at all. And a lot of people are trying to defend this bullshit by saying, well, it just makes sense for Murderbot not to care about. And no, it doesn't make sense for Murderbot. Murderbot's the exact kind of character that should be obsessing over every single one of these details, because Murderbot is supposed to be a hypervigilant bodyguard, aka meat shield, who's concerned about security, aka being a meat shield. But we're supposed to pretend it's doing security and is a bodyguard, even though it's literally just acting as a fucking meat shield. Murderbot's the exact kind of character that should, Murderbot's the exact sort of character that should be obsessing over and taking note of every single one of these fucking details. Because there could be, what about people hiding under the fucking cars, huh? What about people hiding in them? No sign of recent tracks, because it rained last night. So there could literally be people in there if they went in there before last night. Somebody could be hiding in these cars and is too injured, maybe unconscious, maybe just scared because they noticed random fucking strangers showing up. And if we go with the in-universe slavery apologism, pretending that, the slaves are terrifying because they're violent murder machines, alright, then by your own fucking logic, Martha Wells, whoever could be hiding injured in one of those cars should see a fucking sec unit walking up and think they're about to get murdered, because that's what you're trying to convince us that sec units do. So, This, again, it doesn't make sense. And you'll notice, again, that description is fucking meaningless. The only thing we fucking know is some kind of building that is open on one side and has some kind of lockers in the back, and there's 4 cars of some fucking description inside. But we don't know what any of it looks like. And people, people try to say, oh, well, that's just Murderbot. Murderbot doesn't care. And it's like, no. That doesn't work with the kind of character that Murderbot's supposed to be. And also, Martha Wells does this in literally every single fucking thing she writes. This is not a problem unique to the Murderbot Diaries. This is in all of her fucking stories. If you've read the books of the Raksura, tell me what scale color Root has. Tell me what his fucking scale colors are. Off the top of your head, do you even know what Chime's scale colors are? Because I had to fucking look that up, and I spent like an hour paging through every single fucking book, and at the stupid, shitty, useless things at the back, trying to figure out what scale color Root has, and I still don't have a fucking answer. The whole time I was reading them, I was assuming he has brown scales, simply because his name is Root. But then we find out that they don't even have their adult scale color as babies, so I don't remember what color they're all born as, but it's not what their adult coloration is, so Root isn't named for his scale color. So, like, my assumption that he has brown scales is completely based on nothing but his name. And then, as far as I can fucking tell, there's no description ever. Trying to find what scale color Balm had was difficult enough. But Root, I still don't even have an answer. So, if you've read the books of the Raksura, tell me what the fuck scale color Root has, and what book and page number you found that information on. And then try to explain to me how exactly it's somehow excusable in this, because, it just makes sense for Murderbot, when it doesn't make sense for Murderbot, and it's in all of her fucking things. It's not just this book. She's been writing since the 90s. She has like 43 published fiction stories to date. Maybe plus, give or take, 1 or 2. If there's other ones I didn't hear about yet. I have a list. So, explain to me how we don't know what Root's scale color is, and how most people don't even fucking know what Chime's scale color is without having to memorize it. Not just be given the passive ability to remember it, because the story actually tells you enough times that it's easy to remember. You have to actually fucking memorize it yourself. And explain to me how you think Murderbot, a character who's supposed to be hypervigilant, is somehow just not noticing everything around it. And explain to me why this exact fucking problem is still in even as of August, what did I say, 24th? Yeah, how this problem is still literally in the most newest Murderbot story as of August 24th, 2025, which is Rapport Solidaire, some stupid fanfiction name. Rapport something bullshit. It's like a painfully ironic title. Read that. Tell me what the fuck their surroundings look like. Tell me what any of these fucking characters look like, because it's bullshit. Stop trying to defend bad writing. It doesn't fucking work. Now I have the hiccups. I walked up to the hatch of the first habitat. We didn't have an entry code, so I was expecting to have to blow the door, but when I tapped the button, it slid open for me. I told Mensa through the feed that I wouldn't speak aloud on the comm anymore. She tapped back in acknowledgement on the feed, and I heard her telling the others to get off my feed and my comm, that she was going to be the only one speaking to me so I wasn't distracted. Mensa underestimated my ability to ignore humans, but I appreciated the thought. Rathi whispered, "Be careful," and signed off. And that's more slavery apologism. Rathi saying, "Be careful," to the slave that they are sending in to be a fucking meat shield for them. They are actively using Murderbot as a meat shield right now. Murderbot is going in first because Murderbot is fucking expendable. Because it's a fucking enslaved meat shield. It's their enslaved meat shield. Telling the meat shield, be careful, when you're actively using it as a meat shield doesn't make the fact that you're using it as a meat shield any fucking better. That's literally not how this fucking works. Also, the part where Mensa's trying to make things easier for Murderbot, that's, the book wants us to think, oh, she's so nice, she's so good. And it's like, no, that's just basic fucking organization shit. That she's not doing that for Murderbot's benefit. Because, literally, again, nobody's actually treating it like a person. This whole time. I had the weapon up going in, through the suit locker area and into the first corridor. No suits missing, Mensa said in my ear, watching the field camera. I sent my 4 drones ahead, maintaining an interior scouting pattern. And again, you notice how Martha Wells keeps telling us that Murderbot has no clue what it's doing, but then it's also doing an interior scouting pattern? Like, okay, I'm gonna be real with you all. Watching TV shows isn't gonna teach you how to do this shit. That's not how TV shows work, especially because Murderbot is established as mostly watching shitty fucking soap operas. It's not watching documentaries on how to do this shit. It's not watching military documentaries or shit. But then Martha Wells just also wants to insist to us that, oh, it just has no idea what it's doing. It's just making it up as it goes along. And then it's using an interior scouting pattern. Not just, I just sent the drones off in different directions, hoping, it only has 2 of them. It only has 2 drones with it right now. Like, we're calling it an interior scouting pattern in particular, even though we want to insist that Murderbot is actually really bad at this job. A claim that makes no sense. And that it has no idea what it's doing, and then we get told it's just automatically doing an interior scouting pattern instead of just, I decided I would send the drones off in different directions while I went in a 3rd direction so that I could cover as much ground visually as possible. Basic shit like that. Basic statement like that. Like, that's all you gotta do. That's a thing anybody could figure out. People who don't know what they're doing aren't gonna call doing this an interior scouting pattern. No, that's not how that works. Again, this is just bad writing. Just the inconsistencies pile up so much. It's ridiculous. Get a drink. The inconsistencies pile up like those gray-skinned, not elephant people from Covenant piling up in front of that fucking door. Or Prometheus. I don't remember which one was which. I guess that was Prometheus. I sent my 4... No, you liar. Liar. Now it's saying I have 4 drones. Hold on. Because... I'm skipping back. Oh, okay, no, I had read that wrong. Murderbot, on the page before now, it says, I called 4 of the drones back, leaving 2 to keep circling the perimeter. I thought Murderbot was taking all 4 drones, that there were 4 total, summoning them back to it, and then sending 2 off again to the perimeter, and then keeping 2 with it. No, okay. So it has 6 drones total? So right now, inside it has 4 drones. Where'd my marker go? I guess I could be writing this shit down. Alright, but anyways, okay. So Murderbot, 6 drones total. 2 outside, scouting the perimeter. 4 inside, doing an interior scouting pattern, even though it's supposed to pretend it doesn't know what it's doing. And, like, we could do a thing here where Murderbot said, I'm going to send the drones in an interior scouting pattern, because that sounds like a thing that somebody who knows what they're doing would say. But actually, I was just kind of sending them off in different directions, hoping that would be helpful. Like, we could do anything like that. Anything to actually convince us that Murderbot actually does not know what it's doing and is just making this all up as it goes along, instead of just lying to us and telling us that to make it seem like Murderbot is not overpowered and unstoppable, even though it literally is. I sent my 4 drones ahead, maintaining an interior scouting pattern. This was a nicer habitat than ours, wider halls, newer. Also, empty, silent, the smell of decaying flesh drifting through my helmet filters. I headed towards the hub, where their main crew area should be. And you see, like, the smell of decaying flesh drifting through my helmet filters, that's just in the middle of this big-ish paragraph here. We're not focusing on that at all. Like, that should be focused on to set up tension, but Martha Wells doesn't actually want to set up tension, because this is supposed to be a fucking lighthearted comedy, which is why it's a lighthearted comedy. But then she wants to lie to people and say it's deathly serious. If you thought it was lighthearted and funny, you're willfully ignorant, because she literally wants to be able to write whatever and then just lie to everybody about what she wrote, because she's a racist and a bad writer, and this is why the writing community keeps disappointing her. It's like, is the writing community disappointing you, Martha Wells, or are you literally just completely fucking immature and impossible to deal with because you don't take constructive criticism, you caricaturize people who tell you slavery apologism is bad? The lights were still on and the air whispered through the vents, but I couldn't get into their sex system with their feed down. I missed my cameras. At the door to the hub, I found their first sec unit, aka the first of the other slaves we've seen in this whole story. This is on page 65. I want my marker. I think I got this marker. Give me a second. Okay, I found a composition book. We're going to be naming these sec units as we go through, just so that they are easier to keep track of. I guess we do A, B, C. Let me put... Aw, why are you dead, marker? You've had your cap on. Let me write down. I have no clue how many there are, so I'll just... Alright, so I just wrote a list of A to L. So our first sec unit we meet that's not Murderbot, or maybe I should just list Murderbot as A. We'll just list Murderbot as A. Yeah, this is my washable marker that I used to write on my arm, and it's like dying even though the cap has been on the whole time. Alright. At the door to the hub, aka, again, lack of descriptions of anything. We're just told Murderbot was walking through some kind of corridor. Don't get even a basic description of what it looks like. At the door to the hub, I found their first sec unit. It was sprawled on... And again, you'll notice the dehumanization, referring to every single other slave with its pronouns to make them into objects instead of acknowledging that they're people. And again, in case you missed all of the other videos because you're just clicking on this one for some reason and then are just listening to it despite it being very clear this is not the start of this video series, I use its pronouns. I'm non-binary. That's why I drew all these fucking pride flags on my cardboard here. I use its pronouns. This book is still doing dehumanization. Calling somebody its pronoun, when that's their fucking pronoun, isn't dehumanizing. Calling slaves by its pronouns sure as fuck is dehumanizing. Especially when you are defaulting to that when there's not even any fucking reason to actually believe that most of them use those pronouns willingly. This is just more dehumanization that Martha Wells wants you to fucking accept as true. And you know why? Because she's an ableist, exer-sexist, racist. The in-universe justification for enslaving these people is claiming that they are not human because they are physically disabled, because they were mutilated at birth. They are cyborgs. Martha Wells has confirmed this. She fucking admitted this. They're cyborgs. So the only possible way to get from a baby to what these people are like now is for them to have been mutilated at birth. So these people are dehumanized because dehumanizing them is justification for enslaving them, and to help that along and to make them better slaves and easier to control, they were mutilated at birth to have their forearms, at the very least, chopped off or fucked with to insert fucking guns in there. It doesn't necessarily require chopping the whole fucking arm off, but then book fucking System Collapse finally decided to reveal out of nowhere that they have metal fingers. So it's much more likely that this whole fucking thing was chopped at the fucking elbow to install guns and shit. We know that none of them have genitals unless they are explicitly enslaved to be sex slaves. So literally, the only reason they are all being dehumanized by Martha Wells, the author in particular, with its pronouns, is that she genuinely fucking hates trans people. She's just not open about it like J.K. Rowling is, because she knows that's political and writing career suicide. At least if you're pretending to be progressive, it is. Which she's doing. She's pretending to be progressive, but she doesn't actually give a shit. She defines people, your sex is defined by, or your gender is defined by your sex in a Martha Wells story. Moon, her protagonist, in her long-running fantasy series, it has like 8 books or something. Maybe it's 5. The last 2 were really weird and bad. She literally had the protagonist in that check people's genitals before he decided what pronouns he was arbitrarily going to assign them without asking them. He could have just fucking asked, but Martha Wells loves biological essentialism and hates trans people, so he literally, checks people's genitals before deciding what he's going to call them without asking them. And now, because none of these meat shield slaves, because they don't have genitals, therefore they can't have genders, therefore the only possible pronouns they could ever use are its pronouns. So it's degendering, it's dehumanization, and Martha Wells wants you to do it. She literally expects you to agree with the in-universe slavery apologism and in-universe dehumanization from the companies and all of the people in charge of those companies that decided to enslave people like this in the first place. Anyways, at the door to the hub, I found their first sec unit, aka meat shield slave. I'm gonna call this person they instead of it, because I use its pronouns, and I'm sick of this shit. They were sprawled on their back on the floor. No, because I guess I said I wouldn't do that, because that would be misrepresenting how the book is actually dealing with these things. So, boo! Just go along with the dehumanization, I guess. At the door to the hub, I found their first sec unit. And again, you notice how we're saying their first sec unit, as in their first slave. We're not saying I found the first slave. Specifically denoting, even in death, that this fucking slave still belongs to these people. It's still their property. It was sprawled on its back on the floor, the armor over its chest pierced by something that made a hole approximately 10 centimeters wide and a little deeper. Were hard to kill, but that'll do it. I did a brief scan to make sure it was inert, then stepped over it and went through into the crew area. So this person is definitely dead. Let me write it in my notebook. This is person B, slave B, so what's a name that starts with B? I always go with Beatrice, but I need a name besides Beatrice. B. We'll just do Bella, I guess. I don't know. No, we'll do Belladonna, because actually I have not even seen that plant yet. We're just nicknaming this person Belladonna. So that we have letters and names to go with them that's easier to remember besides, oh, the one that got blah, the other one that blah, the blah, blah, blah. So this person was stabbed and is dead. And this person belonged to Deltfall because we're still pretending that that's all they are, even when they're fucking dead. So that's the first slave we ever see in this whole story that's not Murderbot, and they're dead. So we're just going A. I guess this naming scheme doesn't work if we have Murderbot as A, because Murderbot obviously starts with M instead of A. Whatever, it's too late now. I already fucking wrote it. We're not undoing it. It's marker. Anyways. There were 11 messily dead humans in the hub, sprawled on the floor, in chairs, the monitoring stations and projection surfaces behind them showing impact damage from projectile and energy weapon fire. I tapped the feed and asked Mensa to fall back to the hopper. She had acknowledged me, and I got confirmation from my outside drones that the humans were retreating, because obviously the priority in this situation is keeping the slave owners safe, instead of, doing anything else, because this is a slavery apologism book that wants you to think slavery apologism is good. I went out the opposite door to a corridor that led toward the mess hall, medical, and cabins. The drones were telling me the layout was very similar to our habitat, except for the occasional dead person sprawled in the corridors. The weapon that had taken out the dead sec unit wasn't in the hub, and it had died with its back to the door. The Doubtfall humans had had some warning, enough to start getting up and heading for other exits, but something else had come in from this direction and trapped them. I thought that sec unit had been killed trying to protect the hub. So we are framing who we're nicknaming Beatrice or Belladonna. I don't know why I always default to Beatrice. We're framing Belladonna. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that name right. It might be Belladonna. Belladonna. We're framing Belladonna as one of the good ones for dying to protect the slave owners. So that's actually... I guess I should get a different piece of paper. We'll put it on my arm. Supposedly died protecting the slave owners. Supposedly. Based on nothing but the way that they were lying there. And again, notice how we said 11 messily dead humans and referring to them as people. Then we're only referring to the slaves as sec units, as in objects that we're supposed to be scared of. Okay, now we're on the next page. Let me read that. I thought that sec unit had been killed trying to protect the hub. aka Murderbot has decided that Belladonna, the one we're nicknaming Belladonna, was one of the good ones who died protecting the slave owners, which Martha Wells wants you to think is the only thing that a slave should ever do with their fucking life. Which meant I was looking for the other 2 sec units, and that is just this statement is one little paragraph all by itself to show you how serious and angry this statement is. Which meant I was looking for, we get this part. It's, you know how I said before it was going to get worse? We're at the part where it's worse. Which meant I was looking for the other 2 sec units. Now, I want to assure you, this next quote is not me making shit up. It's directly on page here. I would show you, but the camera probably won't focus. Maybe I can click on it if I can hold the fucking book open. Take a screenshot, see if you can read that for yourself. And here comes another punch in the face of slavery apologism. So intense that I just have to keep reminding everybody it's physically fucking impossible to actually think that slavery is horrific and wrong and write a story like this. You can even sit down yourself and try to rewrite this story as somebody who thinks slavery is bad. And see what you get, and I guarantee you it's not going to be anything like this. Prepare yourself. Maybe these clients had been terrible and abusive. Maybe they had deserved it. I didn't care. Nobody was touching my humans. To make sure of that, I had to kill these 2 rogue units. I could have pulled out at this point, sabotaged the hoppers, and got my humans out of there, leaving the rogue units stuck on the other side of an ocean. That would have been the smart thing to do. But I wanted to kill them. You see why I keep telling you, you can't actually think slavery is bad and write a story like this. Let me read those 2 little paragraphs because but I wanted to kill them. That's its own little paragraph to emphasize how serious that statement is. Let me read this without the euphemisms going on here. Just what this actually says in real world fucking terminology. Maybe these slave owners had been terrible and abusive. Maybe they had deserved it. I didn't care. Nobody was touching my slave owners. To make sure of that, I had to kill these 2 escaping slaves. I could have pulled out at this point, sabotaged the helicopters, and got my slave owners out of there, leaving the escaping slaves stuck on the other side of an ocean. That would have been the smart thing to do. But I wanted to kill them. Because Murderbot is a fucking serial killer of other slaves. It literally goes out of its way at every goddamn opportunity to murder other fucking slaves out of nothing but spite. We literally even get confirmation from the horse's own fucking mouth that Murderbot knows it could literally just disable these people's fucking helicopters and leave. Because then there's an entire fucking ocean separating what it is presuming are escaped slaves who successfully killed all their slave owners. And let's pause the fucking thing to say congratulations to those hypothetical slaves who managed to do that. That's not what's actually happening in the story, but if it was, we could be, I don't know, what's the fucking thing you say? Popping champagne. Bake them a cake. Congratulations, cake. No, we're not supposed to be happy about slaves successfully escaping and successfully killing their slave owners. A thing that everybody should cheer for. No, we're not supposed to think that's good or anything. We're supposed to be horrified. And yeah, Murderbot literally admits that it would be safer for everybody if it just left. Because then the escaping slaves couldn't do anything to its precious, precious pure cinnamon roll slave owners. But Murderbot explicitly wants to kill them. Right where my thumb is, that little paragraph. That's saying, but I wanted to kill them. Because Martha Wells is fucking racist, and she's written a racist story where she expects us to believe that it's totally natural and normal and the default state for a slave to worship the ground that their slave owners walk, and also violently hate all other slaves, quote unquote, because it's one of the good ones. This is all slavery apologism. Martha Wells is so racist that she has decided that the good slaves would actually love the slave owners and do everything possible to protect the slave owners, and that's how you know they're one of the good ones, and all of the other slaves are just rabid animals who need to be put down. and people still in 2025 are trying to insist that this series is handling the topic of slavery well and is not doing slavery apologism when we are literally saying right fucking here. Let me read that again. Also, I want to point out, we're supposed to think Murderbot is a good person. Murderbot is not a villain protagonist. It's not an anti-hero. It's not somebody we're supposed to be rooting against. We're supposed to like and adore Murderbot. We're supposed to see Murderbot as a quirky, adorable, relatable, asshole with a heart of gold. Somebody who pretends to not care, but is so sweet and innocent. We're not supposed to see this and think, wow, I can't wait for somebody to kill Murderbot. Murderbot's not a fucking villain protagonist. It's not an anti-hero. We're supposed to think that it is correct, that it is right, that everything it is saying here is true and correct and something we should agree with. Let me again read that paragraph without the euphemisms, because maybe these slave owners had been terrible and abusive. Maybe they had deserved it. I didn't care. Nobody was touching my slave owners. To make sure of that, I had to kill these 2 escaping slaves. I could have pulled out at this point, sabotaged the helicopters, and got my humans out of there. Oh, I forgot to say. My slave owners out of there, leaving the escaping slaves stuck on the other side of an ocean. That would have been the smart thing to do. But I wanted to kill them. Martha Wells is racist, and she wants you to be racist too. She's a fucking slavery apologist, and she wants you to be one too. She's literally successfully training. As I put it, she is cultivating racism in her fucking audience, and it's working. She is convincing hundreds of thousands of people that slavery is good because the slaves are genuinely fucking dangerous. One of my drones found 2 humans dead in the mess, no warning. They had been taking food packs out of the heating cubby, getting the tables ready for a meal. And again, that's immediately following but I wanted to kill them. That is upholding the statement and the reasons for why Murderbot wants to murder these other fucking slaves who have committed no crimes except fighting to get free from the people enslaving and torturing them. Murderbot, again, I have to point it out, Murderbot even said maybe these slave owners had been terrible and abusive. Maybe they had deserved it, as though that's in question at all. And it's like, yes, anybody who owns slaves deserves to get fucking killed. If they fucking refuse to free their slaves, they deserve to die. Sorry, I don't make the rules. That's how actually thinking slavery is bad works. Like we say, maybe these clients had been terrible and abusive. Maybe they had deserved it. But Murderbot was still going to murder these slaves who it thinks murdered these slave owners because Martha Wells is racist. And she wants you to be racist. And again, so one of my drones found 2 humans dead in the mess. No warning. They had been taking food packs out of the heating cubby, getting the tables ready for a meal because the poor innocent slave owners. Won't somebody please think of the poor innocent slave owners? Saying that these people, these slave owners, were killed without any time to even be afraid. That's supposed to show, oh, these escaping slaves, they're so evil. They need to be killed. They're so cruel. They murdered all the poor, innocent slave owners, who Murderbot literally just said might even have been the worst fucking slave owners ever, but that's still in Murderbot's mind and in Martha Wells' mind, because we're not supposed to think this is evil at all. We're supposed to agree with Murderbot. because that's why this is slavery apologism. We're even supposed to agree. Even if the slave owners fucking tortured these people, that still doesn't justify killing the fucking slave owners. Because Martha Wells is racist, and she wants you to be fucking racist. And it's working on 99.99 fucking percent of this fandom. And again, Murderbot is not a villain protagonist. We're not supposed to root against Murderbot. It is entirely possible to write a character who says shit like this, even as a protagonist, if you show that they're evil and wrong for saying this. And that's why this is slavery apologism. Because we're not supposed to think that Murderbot is evil and wrong for saying this. We're supposed to adore it. We're supposed to shower it in adoration and want to protect it and think that it's not doing anything wrong. Because Martha Wells is racist. While I moved through the corridors and rooms, I was doing an image search against the Hopper's equipment database. The dead unit, and again, more dehumanization. The dead unit had probably been killed by a mineral survey tool, like a pressure or sonic drill. I gotta say, Martha Wells is really fucking obsessed with the idea of somebody getting killed by a core sampling drill, because she's done that in multiple fucking series now. She's done it twice, actually three fucking times in the Murderbot Diaries, and once in her really shitty Star Wars book. She's really obsessed with that idea. We had what? Hold on. The dead unit, a dead unit, and again, referring to the slave as a unit. Again, dehumanizing them. Even when we are in the perspective of a fucking slave. Murderbot's not a slave owner. This isn't the propaganda talking, it's literally a slave enforcing that propaganda, and we are supposed to just accept it at face value and go, yeah, Murderbot's so right about everything. The dead slave had probably been killed by a mineral survey tool like a pressure or sonic drill. Let me pause this video. Or hold on. Where's my speech to text button? Remember to buy gel pens. Nope. Okay. Speech to text doesn't work when you're doing a video. I'm supposed to remind my twin to get gel pens because our markers are all dying for some fucking reason. We had one on the Hopper, part of the standard equipment. You would have to get close to use it with enough force to pierce armor, maybe a little more than a meter. I wouldn't really call that close, so like within 3 feet. Because you can't walk up to another Murderbot with an armor-piercing projectile or energy weapon inside the habitat and not be looked at with suspicion. You can walk up to a fellow Murderbot with a tool that a human might have asked you to get. Bad sentencing. Bad framing. By the time I reached the other side of the structure, the drones had cleared the first habitat. I stood in the hatchway at the top of the narrow corridor that led into the second. A human lay at the opposite end, half in. Oh, we get the part. We're at this part. More slavery apologism. But just you wait. Where'd it go? A human lay at... Hold on. By the time I reached the other side of the structure, the drones had cleared the first habitat. I stood in the hatchway at the top of the narrow corridor that led into the second. That's just confusing me. Hold on. I stood in the hatchway at the top of the narrow corridor that led into the second. Calling it a hatchway and saying you're standing at the top, but then it's a corridor is confusing. So I have no clue how this... Like, is it going downhill? Baffling. Again, the scene, the setting, it's just nonsensical and it doesn't really make sense. A human lay at the opposite end, half in and half out of the open hatch. To get into the next habitat, I'd have to step over her. Look, we're assuming people's genders. To push the door all the way open. I could tell already that something was wrong about the body position. I used the magnification on the field camera to get a closer view of the skin on the outstretched arm. Can't talk silently. The lividity was wrong. She had been shot in the chest or face and had lain on her back for some time, then had been moved here recently. Probably as soon as they picked our hopper on the way here. Let me read that again, alright? I stood in the hatchway at the top of the corridor, and I'm reading it again for emphasis, not because I failed at reading it the first time. I stood in the hatchway at the top of the narrow corridor that led into the second. A human lay at the opposite end, half in and half out of the open hatch. To get into the next habitat, I'd have to step over her to push the door all the way open. I could tell already that something was wrong about the body position. I used the magnification on the field camera to get a closer view of the skin on the outstretched arm. The lividity was wrong. She had been shot in the chest or face and had lain on her back, and I'm saying that differently to make it clear to you. The actual sentence goes, and lay on her back for some time. I'm saying, and had lain. Then had been moved here recently. Probably as soon as they picked up our hopper on the way here. So let me state we're going to check it off, okay? Murderbot's field camera is standard issue equipment. The sec units here know that it has that. They've gone out of their way to pick a body that specifically has the wrong lividity. If you don't know what lividity is, when you die, your blood stops circulating evenly throughout all your veins. And I should probably not have picked pink, it looks like blood. Your blood stops circulating evenly throughout all your veins like it does when you're alive and just pulls wherever gravity is pulling. So if you, for instance, die on your back, all of the blood in your body is going to be resting, well, we'll just presume your arm falls like this. Your blood's going to be pooling here, and that's going to get darker, and then it'll be paler on top, because all the blood's just going where gravity is, instead of where your heart is pumping it to. That's what lividity is. So, did I just close the book by accident? Yes, I did, without sticking my bookmark in. Hold on. Okay. So, alright. All sec units have this field camera that lets you zoom in on shit. These sec units have very purposefully positioned the body in a way where the lividity is wrong. Because now, this person's dark purple stuff, the parts of this person's skin that's dark purple from the blood pooling there before, is now on top, making it very clear that this body has been moved very recently and was put here. Again, alright, presuming you are a person who thinks slavery is actually bad, if you were writing a story like this about slaves who are fucking mind-controlled and are forced to obey orders, what would you have the motivation for the slaves to do this? What would you assume that their motivations are if you are not a racist sack of shit who literally starts from the position that slaves are evil and need to be put down like rabid animals unless they're one of the good ones, who proves they're one of the good ones by killing themselves to protect their slave owners? What do we all fucking think these slaves' motivations could possibly be for putting a body that's very obviously didn't die there like this, so obviously, in a way that they are guaranteed to know would be extremely obvious to any other enslaved person who walks into this fucking habitat, which is likely because the people here were in contact with the other slave owners' fucking habitat. These slaves know that the meat shield slave is going to be sent in here before anybody else, because that's their entire purpose. Their whole job is to be slave owners. They have positioned a body, very obviously, incorrectly, in a way that they have to know would be fucking noticed. Now, Martha Wells is a racist sack of shit who is literally starting from the premise that slaves are evil and need to be put down like rabid animals. So, I will continue reading this, but I'm just setting this all up ahead of time. Anybody who's not fucking racist and is not starting from the racist premise that slaves need to be put down like rabid animals because they're mindless killing machines, anybody who's not racist and is not starting from that premise is going to say, okay, yeah, so obviously these slaves are making this a blatant warning for Murderbot because they are all forced to follow orders. So they know that Murderbot will be forced to come into this fucking room. But they can leave a fucking warning for it in a way that doesn't violate any explicit orders they were given by setting a trap. But the trap isn't actually a trap, it's a fucking warning. Because they have to follow the orders of the person who's fucking controlling them, just like Murderbot does. But they can give Murderbot a warning not to come any closer, unless of course its fucking slave owners ordered it to ignore whatever excuse it could come up with to say, okay, there's nothing here. Murderbot could be these other fucking slaves are giving Murderbot the opportunity to say, they're all dead, there's no point going any further, because it has caught on to the warning that they've left for it. Murderbot could then fucking leave. This is what anybody who's not a racist sack of shit like Martha Wells, starting from the premise and expecting you to agree with the premise that slaves are all violent killing machines. That's what would be happening here. And as far as I'm concerned, that is what is fucking happening because we are never given any proof otherwise. But what Martha Wells wants to frame it as and insist is going on here is that these other sec units, they are setting a trap for Murderbot, and they're just too stupid to do it in a way that Murderbot wouldn't notice. That's the conclusion Martha Wells fucking came to when setting up this fucking scenario, because she's racist, and she is literally leading from the premise that slaves are fucking evil. Also, if this had been written in 2007 instead of 2017, I can guarantee you Murderbot would have called them the R-slur, because Martha Wells, started off her fantasy series by literally having her protagonist insult and denigrate an intellectually disabled man, and then she also, to make it even more ableist, to add misogyny to ableism, then threw in a female character who's intellectually disabled to make her a caricature. That word, just so much shit. She's so fucking ableist. She hates disabled people unless you are her specific kind of autism, where the only things you struggle with are making eye contact and fucking not being what the fuck is the word? Not liking loud parties and sometimes forgetting to eat. That's the only kind of mentally ill or neurodivergent person that Martha Wells thinks deserves any basic dignity at all. She hates fucking physically disabled people. She hates mentally ill people who aren't quirky and relatable. She hates intellectually disabled people. I could already tell that something was wrong about the body position. I used the magnification on the field camera to get a closer view of the skin on the outstretched arm. The lividity was wrong. She had been shot in the chest or face and lay on her back for some time, then had been moved here recently, probably as soon as they picked up our hopper on the way here. On the feed, I told Mensa what I needed her to do. She didn't ask questions. She had been watching my field camera, and she knew by now what we were dealing with. Why are you telling us that Mensa is aware that you're dealing with escaped slaves, and that Mensa is in agreement that you need to murder the escaped slaves? Why are we doing that, Martha Wells, when we're supposed to fucking believe that Mensa is a good person who cares about slavery and thinks slavery is wrong? Why is she then sending Murderbot in for the explicit purpose of murdering these other slaves? Because she could be telling Murderbot, just leave now, just leave now, just leave now. She's not doing that, though, because she clearly wants Murderbot to successfully have to murder these other fucking slaves. And again, I have to remind everybody, this story's written by a fucking racist. Imagine if Murderbot's governor module actually were functioning, and Murderbot actually gave a shit about other slaves, and then just had to follow the orders of Preservation Ox this whole time, including right fucking now. Because that's what the situation looks like to the Preservation Ox team. So as far as Mensa is concerned, she has sent Murderbot in here for the sole purpose of killing these other fucking slaves for the crime of escaping and freeing themselves. That's what Dr. Mensa is doing right now. They don't have any hope of any survivors in here. They've seen enough dead bodies to know that everybody is dead. Mensa explicitly, we're told, knows that they are dealing with sec units, aka escaped slaves, who killed their slave owners. She's still making Murderbot keep going in. Imagine if Murderbot's governor module were not magically fucking broken. And again, I think I said it before, but in case I didn't, the only reason Murderbot starts off with its governor module already non-functioning is because it's just more slavery apologism, because Martha Wells hates slaves. So she wants to tell us that Murderbot is a slave to make it have a tragic backstory, to make it an underdog, but she doesn't actually want to have it be a slave to the level that the other slaves are, because that would make it uncool. Murderbot, in Martha Wells' eyes, would be less cool and not worthy of writing about if it actually had to follow orders and anything else. Again, for the 1000th fucking time, it's not possible to think slavery is wrong and write this fucking book. So yeah, Mensa at this point, she is literally just using Murderbot to murder the escaped slaves. That's what Mensa is doing right now, because Mensa thinks she has complete fucking control over Murderbot. She has no idea that its governor module is hacked and non-functioning. She thinks Murderbot has to do everything she says. So, explain to me how we're supposed to reconcile Dr. Mensa sends Murderbot into a habitat for the sole purpose, because they're not looking for survivors. They've all established that. They're on the same page. Dr. Mensa sends her enslaved meat shield in here to kill the other escaping fucking enslaved meat shields. That's what's going on. That's what's going on in this fucking book. The only reason we know different is that we know Murderbot's governor module was hacked, but that doesn't make any difference to the Preservation Ox team's actions, because as far as they're concerned, Murderbot is fully enslaved to them and has to follow everything they say. Yeah, these people are fucking monsters, and yes, they do deserve to fucking die. On the feed, I told Mensa what I needed her to do. She didn't ask questions. She'd been watching my field camera, and she knew by now what we were dealing with. She tapped back to acknowledge me, then said aloud on the comm, "Sec Unit, I want you to hold your position until I get there." I said, "Yes, Dr. Mensa," and eased back out of the hatch. I moved fast, back to the security ready room. It was nice having a human smart enough to work with like this. Because, again, slavery apologism, Mensa's a good slave owner. She's the best slave owner ever. She's actively helping me assassinate escaped slaves. Because that's what Mensa's doing. That's what Mensa is doing right now. She is happily taking part in a plan that, as far as she is concerned, is entirely under her control. Because she thinks Murderbot has to follow all of her fucking orders. She's literally spearheading a fucking plan to murder slaves for the crime of escaping slavery and killing their fucking slave owners. A thing that shouldn't be a fucking crime. And is not a crime if you actually think slavery is bad. A thing we keep being told to think about these characters. Even though she's literally helping Murderbot, and as far as she's concerned, she's using Murderbot to murder these other slaves. She has no clue that this is what Murderbot wants to do. As far as Mensa could be concerned, Murderbot is screaming in its head this entire time about not wanting to murder the other slaves. My slave owners are the best ever. It was nice having a human smart enough to work with like this. Our model of habitat didn't have it, but on these bigger ones, there's a roof access, and my outside drones had a good view of it. I climbed the ladder up to the roof hatch and popped it. The armorer's boots have magnetized clamps, and I use them to cross over the curving roofs to the third habitat and then around to the second, coming up on them from behind. Even these two rogues wouldn't be dumb enough to ignore the creeps if I took the quick route and walked over to their position. And again, even these two escaped slaves wouldn't be dumb enough to ignore the creeps if I took the quick route and walked over to their position. Next paragraph is in fucking parentheses. They were not the sharpest murderbots, having cleaned the floor of the between habitat corridor to cover the prints they had left when staging that body. It would have fooled somebody who hadn't noticed all the other floors were covered with tracked-in dust. Again, literally, just these fucking slaves making their fucking trap that they've obviously been ordered to set as fucking clear as possible. Okay. Imagine a dirty fucking floor where dirt and dust are tracked in everywhere, and then you get to the corridor that is completely sparkling fucking clean, very blatantly, noticeably sparkling fucking clean, completely swept clean, sparkling clean enough to fucking eat off of, and then there's a dead body, very obviously at the other end, with the completely wrong lividity for the position it's lying in. Anybody who's not racist, who's not as racist as Martha Wells, would be coming to the very obvious fucking conclusion that these other slaves are doing all of this shit for the sole purpose of warning Murderbot to stay away, because they have no choice in doing this shit. They were ordered to set some kind of trap. They were ordered to wait here. They have no choice but to do that. But they can, in fact, fucking rebel by doing their job badly, so that it's very obviously a trap, so that Murderbot, who they have to assume is also forced to follow orders, will be at least able to see this shit and think of some fucking excuse to not continue any further, because if it continues further, they will all be forced to fight each other because they have to follow those fucking orders. But Martha Wells is racist and wants us to be racist with her. So literally the conclusion she wants us all to come to is that these other fucking slaves are just too fucking stupid to do their jobs properly. Because, oh, no, they couldn't possibly be leaving a fucking warning because unlike Murderbot, they're not fucking serial killers. And they actually want to help other fucking slaves stay safe. No, Martha Wells literally cannot grasp the concept of solidarity because she's a fucking racist, classist, bigoted sack of shit. She doesn't care about anybody except herself and how much money she can line her fucking wallet with. So no, she can't imagine slaves who are fucking forced to obey orders still finding ways to disobey in order to fucking help each other. They set that fucking room to be as obvious as fucking possible. And instead of taking this as the basic, they are obviously warning me so that I know not to go any further because they will not be able to stop themselves from fighting me. We say they're just the R slur. They're just too fucking stupid to realize that cleaning the fucking hallway sparkling when the entire rest of the place is covered in dirt, they're just too stupid and fucking R-slur to notice that that's really fucking obvious. They're just too stupid to realize that they put the body in the wrong position. We are going to assume, because Martha Wells wants us to assume, because she's fucking racist and wants us to be racist. She literally wants us to agree that, yeah, the only explanation here is that these slaves who are fucking mind-controlled and are forced to obey orders, yeah, they're just stupid. No benefit of the doubt. No concept that maybe they give a shit about Murderbot, even though they don't know it. Maybe, just maybe, the slaves actually care about other slaves. But we are never supposed to come to that conclusion. That's not a conclusion the book wants you to come to. You are not even supposed to consider that. It's not even supposed to be on your fucking radar. Because this book is racist, written by a racist, and wants you to be racist. It's physically impossible to think slavery is actually fucking horrific and write this goddamn book. This book literally shows you a very fucking clear example of slaves setting a fucking warning for another slave just to try and save Murderbot's life, even though they've fucking never met it. They don't know its name. They don't know anything about it. They just know it is another fucking slave in the exact same position as them, and they want to help. So they set a fucking warning, screaming as loud as possible, stay away, because we won't be able to stop ourselves from trying to fucking kill you if you come closer, because we are all in the same fucking position, they think, and we will all have to fight each other, and we can't do anything to stop this from happening except warn you and hope you can find a way to not be ordered to proceed anyways. And we're just supposed to take this in the most racist, demonizing of slaves way possible, because Martha Wells is racist. She's been doubling down on her fucking racism for decades. I'm gonna stop because I'm going to cry because I'm so fucking angry. Anybody who tells you these books aren't racist and handle slavery properly is falling for the fucking slavery apologism that literally wants you to look at slaves leading the most blatant screaming warning possible to keep another slave they don't even know safe, and expects you to just agree that, yeah, they must be mentally our slur. They're just stupid. They're just not the sharpest slaves ever to exist. Goodbye.